And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are going to be looking at some key points for the Washington Commanders in order to beat the Cleveland Browns. We're also going to be looking at the injury reports and some of the key updates to that injury report, which is going to play into Sunday's game. So, right now, we're looking at an article here where it's just talking about the early odds and predictions for week 5 for the Commanders. I can tell you right now that the Commanders are going into the game as a favorite. I believe it's like a 3-point favorite, if I'm not mistaken. But aside from all that, let's go ahead and jump into the key points for the Washington Commanders. And these are points that I've kind of come up with based off the stats for both teams. And so I'll start with the first one, and that is really stay in the moment, stay present for this Washington Commanders team. They've been on a roll the last couple weeks with the huge win against the Bengals. They had a big win against the Giants, and then they've had a coming out win against the Arizona Cardinals. And so when I say stay in the moment, the Washington Commanders need to continue to focus on the things that got them to the party. And for me, that is going to be running the football, okay? Because the Cleveland Browns gave up over 100 yards to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I can tell you that I had Zamir White on my fantasy football team, and he has not been playing well at all. And he had a little bit of a breakout day against the Cleveland Browns. They let the Raiders run all over them. He had 17 rushes for 50 yards, and then Alexander Madison had 60 yards as well. And so this is a team that is very vulnerable on the ground. And so I think that the Commanders have got to take advantage of that, especially since Brian Robinson just had a pretty big day against the Arizona Cardinals. He had 21 carries for 101 yards. And then also too, Jeremy McNichols also had quite a day against the Arizona Cardinals. And so you'd have to think that he is probably going to be a big factor in what the Washington Commanders do, because Austin Eckler is still limited in practice. So we're not sure what we are going to get if he's going to be available. I think he would absolutely be a great addition to the running back room, obviously, if he plays. But if we have to go with Brian Robinson and then Jeremy McNichols, we need to make sure that that is a focal point in going against the Cleveland Browns and getting this win. So that is point number one. And that's kind of stay in the moment. Then also to run the football. Next up, stay disciplined. I think that you have to stay disciplined. So what does that mean? Stay disciplined on the defensive end, because I know that, the quarterback play for Deshaun Watson has been a struggle there. A lot of people are wondering, are the Cleveland Browns going to bench Deshaun Watson? They obviously gave up a lot of draft capital to get him. And also, too, they signed him to a huge contract. And it probably does not help that right now he is had 19 sacks in the NFL, which actually leads the league. So, the Cleveland Browns, they are a team that will give up sacks. And I think that the Washington Commanders on defense, much like they did last week, are going to have to stay disciplined in their rushing lanes. And so don't allow Deshaun Watson to get outside the pocket and make plays with his feet. Make it tough for him to make plays down the field. I think that if you keep him in the pocket, much like you kept Kyler Murray in the pocket, I think it is going to become a difficult day for the Cleveland Browns to really go down the field. Last week, 24 of 32, only 176 yards, 3 sacks. He had a quarterback rating there of 36.4. Absolutely terrible. Had a touchdown and an INT, but I think that is how you really have to attack the Cleveland Browns when it comes down to defensively. And so hopefully we're getting there, much like last week, with a lot of natural pressures, which I think that is something that Dan Quinn wants to do. And if we do come with the blitz, the design blitz, we have to make sure that we're getting home and that we are going ahead and we are tackling. And so that leads me to the next point. You're going to have to tackle and tackle well, because I think that they're going to probably go ahead and use Jerome Ford and then also to Deontay Freeman. Both of those players like to play physical. They are going to try to get some extra yards after the initial contact. So you have to think that you're going to need to tackle and take away a lot of splash plays after contact. So I think that is going to be huge. You must tackle well. That is something that the Washington Commanders struggled with early on in the season. Even in our wins, we've still got to find a way to get these guys on the ground. And so that means that, yes, you're going to have to tackle Jerome Ford, Deontay Freeman, and then also, too, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, who are also, too, could get loose in the secondary. And so, lastly, I think that the Washington Commanders are going to have to really seriously lock in a bit more on the secondary here, because I think that with Jerry Jeudy coming in, he's had some strong days for the Cleveland Browns. I think that Amari Cooper has shown some signs. I think he hasn't had necessarily the greatest season just yet, but he's got a lot of targets over there. So he keeps getting peppered with targets, and you know that eventually at some point he's going to break through. And so I think the Commanders are going to have to make sure that they shorten the field and really keep everything in front of them. Do not give up splash plays. Make the Cleveland Browns really have to go down the field and really use a lot of the clock, because I was looking at Locked On Commanders, and they were doing an episode where they had the Cleveland host on there as well. And he was talking about the fact that it was Jeff Lloyd, and he was talking about the fact that with the Cleveland Browns, they actually are a team that gets a lot worse as the clock goes along. And so as you kind of string out the game, that team seems to get tired, especially on the defensive end. We know that Myles Garrett had 2 sacks, but aside from that, once you start to wear down this defense, the offense is not the type of offense that is going to be able to put up a lot of points out there. And very quickly, it takes them time to get down the field. I think by shortening the game, the Washington Commanders can put themselves in a great situation to win this game on Sunday. And so that leads me to the injury reports right now. And so when we look at it, I talked about the fact that the Washington Commanders are going to need to run the football. And then that starts with Nick Allegretti. I think that he has been limited the last couple of days with an ankle. We're certainly going to need him at the guard position here to go ahead and open up some holes. Talked about Brian Robinson Jr. He had a knee. He did not practice on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. And circling back to Nick Allegretti, he actually had a limited practice here on Thursday. So limited for him, DNP for Brian Robinson Jr. Noah Brown did not practice. He was limited on Wednesday with a groin. Percy Butler did practice a little bit here, limited. He's got a groin coming into this one. And Austin Eckler, all right, he went from limited to now a full participant today. So that is a great sign. Just talked about that and how the Commanders are going to need to run the football. So a full participant for him. We have Quan Martin. He was a full participant today with the shoulder. So that is a great sign. And then with the Cleveland Browns, I think one of the most notable injury updates here for them is that Nick Chubb was back in practice. And again, just looking at the Locked On Commanders episode, Jeff Lloyd, who talks about the Cleveland Browns, said that Nick Chubb didn't have a knee brace on, and he talked about how he felt great out there. Doesn't think that he's going to play against the Commanders. Could be a couple weeks before we see Nick Chubb, excuse me. And I think that that's going to be huge. Just as an NFL fan to see him come back from that injury. But I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to be facing him. So I think that that is a pretty major update going into this particular game, because I think that if he's healthy, that certainly helps the Cleveland Browns out if they're going to run the football here. So in any case, those are some of the major updates as far as the injury report is concerned for both teams going into this game. I still like the Washington Commanders. I know that they are a 3-point favorite. Initially, right now, I have this being a 30-20 contest, maybe even 24. I think that there's going to be a lot of points put up again, but I think the Commanders can go ahead and continue to get better like they've done each week offensively. I think defensively, you're going to see something here from the Commanders as they get ready to go back home. So let me know in the comments what you're thinking. This is Rico. This is Washington Commanders Insider. We're talking Washington Commanders every day. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Peace. Peace.